maybe if your economic situation in your country is causing you to have to deal with it like you're at war, maybe something's gone wrong. Oh, well, net zeros means we have to import electricity. Yeah, we're importing electricity from a country that makes its electricity through renewable sources. So it's just kind of nostalgia television, but like spiteful anti-youth nostalgia television. They fundamentally have an inferiority complex where they believe the people who are in charge of them are their overlords who are better than them.
And the infrastructure of the country's never been looked after properly, so it's all falling apart now. We never saved in.
Oh, is it? Oh, is the infrastructure not been looked after? Oh, I wonder who's been in power for the last 12 years. This is the most bald man in Britain. He's called James Whale. He's a guy who works for Talk TV, which we're going to be covering a lot of. I'm going to make sure I do more reactions to these people. Firstly, because I feel like we need to have more combative content that people can enjoy me roasting people with shit opinions. But second of all, because they don't copyright claim me when I do reactions on YouTube, so I like to make money out of their reactions. So it's good content, and it's content that generates revenue. It's great. Fucking the AdSense revenue, let it pour in. Let's go. But James Whale is the baldest man in Britain. He is just like genuinely an incredibly fucking stupid person. Like chronically stupid. Like, you can tell by his tweets that he puts out on Twitter. Well, obviously, where else would he put them out? But you can tell by how he tweets, and it's always just him having this kind of train of thought splurge onto his computer screens. There's never any punctuation, right? There's never any punctuation on any of the tweets that James Whale ever sends out. And here's this segment of his on Talk TV. James Whale hilariously owns millennials over winter blackouts. People are too soft. So we're going to go over this segment, and he's going to sound like an absolute clown, because he is one, and we're going to mock him for it relentlessly. So let's go.
Two words which strike all sorts of lovely warm feelings coursing through my veins. The words are James and Whale, but I like even more what it says in the line below. It says, James Whale, big fan of Blackouts. James, hey, hello.
Hello, darling, how are you?
I am well, and it's so adorable to have you on the show.
He's just like the epicenter of baldness. Like, I know I can't talk, but at least I take finasteride, so I'm staving off like the future hair loss at the very least, right? But he's just like the person who just like he's the epitome of baldness on the outside, and he looks like an egg, right? I mean, he's such a detestable human. I feel absolutely no qualms in mocking his appearance. If you want to mock my appearance back, James, if for some reason you're watching this segment because you have nothing better to do than watching a 1,000 subscriber Andy on YouTube, be my guest. But even so, he's just, oh God, he's just like the absolute bottom right hand corner on the bald axis.
Really, but let me ask you about Blackouts. You're a big fan of Blackouts, and I must say I remember them pretty affectionately myself.
Yeah, well, I was,
back in my day, we never had these newfangled lights. We dealt with blackouts like by thinking of England and being we beat the blackouts with patriotism. That's what we did back in our day.
Yeah, in the 70s, I remember I was on the air in the 70s, and we had blackouts, and the radio station I worked on had to get this huge generator. They got a load of us to come down and pull it into the reception area and plug it in so we could still work and get home.
But bear in mind, this is 50 fucking years ago.
There were candles everywhere, and you put on your favourite jumper, and what my mother used to say was the wartime spirit has kicked in again. I think it's great. I mean, you know, it's
true. That is true, right? People shouldn't moan about these things happening because people got through the war. I'm like, maybe if your socio-political and economic situation in your country is causing you to have to deal with it like you're at a fucking war, maybe something's gone wrong. Maybe this is less than ideal. Maybe we should try and stop these things happening.
Been stupid in this country, I'm sorry to wind everybody up, going down this net zero ridiculously stupid thing. So we sold off all our ability to have enough power saved up. We have to buy it from abroad now, which, if you believe in net zero, must be doing a lot worse because we have to buy it in.
Look, there's things like the gas deposits. We have it on our own shores, yet we still buy it on the wholesale market because the licenses got sold by Thatcher in the 80s to private companies. Sure, we do have to import some electricity from Norway, but we actually, if we wanted to be able to increase the capacity to be able to do that, be able to, you know, get the additional electricity, we could do. We have the coal-fired power stations ready to go. These things like the gas and coal power stations, they kind of go up and down, where we use them more during the summer because, you know, there's less wind. But during the winter, we get loads of winter. We get actually loads of wind power coming through, and then the way in which our national grid takes its power in shifts slightly, and then we slightly power down things like gas and coal-fired power stations, especially because we now need to use the gas to heat our homes at the end of the day, right? So paying for imported electricity isn't really that much of a problem. We import it from Norway. It's not hugely expensive because they all make it with hydroelectricity, amusingly, right? I'm saying, oh, well, net zero means we have to import electricity. Yeah, we're importing electricity from a country that makes its electricity through renewable sources, so that's part of their net zero plan as well. And if anything, the issue is that we don't have enough public infrastructure because everything's been privatized, where everything is working on a knife edge to try and generate it with the maximum profit, with the cash flow stretched as far as possible, so that when shocks happen to the market, it explodes in the consumer's face and there's no protection. The issue is there's not been enough public money spent on things like, I would admit, gas storage, so that we always have a backup if we need to, and also investing in more renewable energy to make sure that if there's ever a price shock on gas, let's not forget, the reason why we're having so many issues at the moment with heating our homes and with producing electricity is because too much of it still relies on gas. So when gas prices go up, all of our bills go up, because still like 30% of our electricity is generated through gas power stations. Whereas if this was entirely renewable, if we had more nuclear power stations, if we had more wind, solar, hydro, biomass, whatever you feel like you want to do, geothermal power, etc., tidal power, when the gas price would go up on the wholesale market price, because, I don't know, maybe a massive geopolitical conflict rages within the markets that we buy our gas from, thereby restricting the supply, therefore, as demand maintains, the price goes up. We don't have to care because we're no longer buying gas wholesale because we don't need gas to be able to make electricity, thereby avoiding blackouts. It's incredibly simple. Unless the price of uranium-238 massively increases overnight or something because that supply chain has been constrained, so a theoretical nuclear power station that we may or may not have for some reason doesn't get the materials it needs to be able to power, massively increase in price. Don't see that happening anytime in the future. That's what the drive to net zero would give us. It would reduce the amount of blackouts that we would have, not increase it. You actually have to be incredibly stupid, like James Whale is, to not understand that particular position. Or you could be, as I'm a position I have said many times, we just need to sequestrate the gas deposits we have in the North Sea, sell them at cost to our own power stations to make sure that we don't have to drive up huge amounts of public sovereign debt to be able to buy gas on the wholesale market at ridiculously inflated prices, and whilst also not having a windfall tax on the people we're giving all this money to.
From elsewhere.
Yes.
So we have nothing left.
And do you believe that we will actually be blacked out? Because actually, you remember it and I remember it, but people who aren't quite as vintage or quite as antique as we are won't remember it. And when it happens, it is absolutely extraordinary because it all goes out at once. Suddenly it's dark, it's cold, you can't watch telly, you can't cook anything, you can't have a bath because the water's cold, you don't know what to do, you can't see to read a book because you try reading by candlelight, that doesn't really work. You spend, when I was a kid, I was born in 62, so when the blackouts, I was probably about 11, 12, something like that, maybe a little bit older, you'd spend a lot of time in the cupboard waiting to jump out and frighten the absolute life out of your grandma, which was very good fun. We used to do that. But I suppose it's a limited edition.
I love how so much of like boomer media is just post hoc justification for trying to turn back the clock to the time that they remember in their early years, right? It's just kind of nostalgia television, but like spiteful anti-youth nostalgia television, where they want to be able to inflict the things that they endured on other people because they think like build character or something, as if things can never get better. Like, despite the fact that if you actually look at, for example, I know on an economic scale, millennials and Zoomers are going to be the first two generations to be poorer than their parents. We're going to be worse off than our parents, right? Sure, maybe we have fewer blackouts. There's not going to be the rolling blackouts of the oil crisis of the 70s. That's for sure, right? It's probably going to be a short-run thing whilst there's a spike in the gas market due to the war in Ukraine right now. It's not going to be as bad as it was in the 70s, for certain. But we saw the same thing when we were getting the heat waves. Let's be real, right? During the heat waves of last year, actually, sorry, this year the heat waves happened. People's houses burned down. People lost their livelihoods. People died. That's the thing that happened. These are really bad things. And these people on here were going, well, I lived through the summer. I lived through the summer in the hot summer that I lived through previously when I was a wee whippersnapper, and we just enjoyed the sunshine and stopped complaining. I'm like, we were asking to take precautions so that people wouldn't die. That's what we were doing, because that's just better, rather than, we can be, there are plenty of people out there enjoying the sunshine, but one scientist coming on saying, A, this is bad because it shows that climate change is getting worse, and B, these are things that you should do to make sure that you take care of yourself during a heat wave. This was seen as quote-unquote woke. Again, as I was saying before, because it's utilitarian. That's what they mean when they say woke. They mean utilitarian, because we don't care about, what overall attitude people take. We just understand that from a base level, there is negative utility in people's houses burning down and these people dying. Like, that's just a basic fact. Like, and I don't care, if it's ruining your enjoyment of the heat wave. If we point this out, it needs to get pointed out so that precautions are taken so they don't die, and that's more important than how you feel. Your hurt fees about people saying that maybe a heat wave isn't an entirely positive thing.
Hilarious thing. Once you've done it, 50 or 60 times, you probably had enough. And then what were you meant to do? Then we went to bed, and we went to bed cold, didn't we?
Well, I don't know whether you remember, but I think everybody's a bit weak and a bit soppy these days, because I used to get up in the morning to go to school. There was ice on the inside of the windows.
That's what Esther Ranson said, and I remember it too. Of course I remember that. And also sometimes the water on your bedside table froze over.
Exactly. And pools of...
Well, the thing is that what's amusing is I think that they somehow think that millennials are getting worried about blackouts and worried about not being able to put the heating on because they think that that's something that they can't deal with. When I don't know about, maybe it's just my echo chamber, but I think most millennials are just angry about the fact that old people might die. Cold snaps cause old people to die. In fact, cold snaps like this with no heating caused people to die in the 70s that they're now reminiscing about. But they just don't seem to care about all the people that died. But also, for example, the way in which we use technology at the moment. Actually, someone on Twitter was talking about, I think about Ash Sarkar was talking about this, how there are people, it was Owen Jones, sorry. Owen Jones saying there are people here who are on things like, dialysis machines, people who need constant, they need that constant access to electricity to make sure they have medical equipment that continues to run over and over. If there's a 3-hour blackout, they could be put into hospital. It could be catastrophic events as far as they're concerned. They need to have electricity on all the time. That wasn't the case in the 1970s, or at least not to the same extent that it is now. And we're just acknowledging that there are consequences to these things, right? I'm sure that you and your incredibly personally very hardy human, and going through all the stuff of the oil crisis of the 70s, you toughened up and dealt with it. Brilliant. People are going to have to do the same thing now. I don't disagree. But the idea that we're really soft or something because we care a tiny bit about the idea that maybe old people might die during a cold snap with no heating, it just shows that, again, they care more about getting angry at people that disagree with them than they do about the actual material consequences of what's going to happen in the future, right? In the same way that they got angry about Nicola Sturgeon saying that she detested the Tories, more angry than they got about all the people that were killed due to Tory austerity. Like, it's all civility politics. It's all, again, it's hurt fees. It's facts over feeling. It's feelings over facts as far as people like James and Vanessa are concerned. You bought a camping stove, rechargeable lights, and a wind-up radio from which I can charge my phone up and a hot water bottle. I mean, that's definitely the precaution that you should definitely make. 100%, yeah. Like, if it looks like we're going to be getting the rolling blackouts and the lack of access to heating, then that's certainly a good thing. Actually, excellent tip for people who want to stay warm without heating up their entire house. Heated blankets. They cost 1p an hour to run, so they're like 100 times less electricity than using like a fan heater or something, and you don't have to heat up a whole room when you're not using it. Like, I live with my brother in a 3-bedroom house where he's got a studio, and we've got like a joint living room, dining room downstairs. There's no point in heating anywhere downstairs at all. And it's only 2 of us. We only use 2 rooms at a time. Just get 2 heated blankets, heat ourselves. No point in heating up the rest of the house. Save money. If there's no gas, then we've got something to do, right? Obviously, if the electricity goes out, that's a different issue. But at least we've got something there. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking precautions, but we're just worried about the actions that the government are or are not taking to protect vulnerable people, like people who need access to, equipment to keep them alive, or old people who we need to make sure they keep warm, lest they perish over the course of the winter period. Like, the fact that we're calling that these people are thinking that we're somehow triggered because we are trying to press the government for action just shows how, like, again, these people are just bootlickers, right? They fundamentally have an inferiority complex where they believe the people who are in charge of them are their overlords who are better than them, rather than people who are supposed to answer to our needs, right? They hate to represent us if they're in power.
Water on the windowsill.
Totally.
People are too soft today. Put on a jumper. Now, last year, we had a major power cut where I live out in the middle of nowhere, which went on for a whole through, and so we had nothing left.
What a surprise that this guy lives in some big house out in the fucking country. What a surprise! Never met anybody from an urban area in his life, probably, or at least not in the last how many years.
We got a wood-burning stove, one of these old-fashioned ones with a hot plate on the top. So Mrs. W decided that she would cook on that. So now it does take quite a while to cook things and boil a kettle on it, but it was great fun.
It was great.
It was great fun.
I mean, I remember.
But anybody
there are plenty of things that I would describe as fun, and having to cook like you're camping in the middle of a bloody field, like GeoWizard, not my idea of fun. I do not go to festivals to camp. I do not like it. I do not want to camp in my own house. That doesn't sound like fun. If it's a necessity, sure, I'll do it. Do I want to do it? Am I going to enjoy doing it? Not really.
Remember the Calagas ring? Everyone's mum got a Calagas ring. Do you remember? So then you could just put the whole dinner into one saucepan. You're sitting pretty much in the dark.
It's just nostalgia. It's just boomer nostalgia TV.
We had a little paraffin lamp. Did you get one of those in the power cuts? We had one of those.
Yeah.
Because the wick would last longer than a candle. It wouldn't be very bright, but it would sort of burn. And so you'd have your paraffin lamp in the middle of the table. Your mum would be cooking. It was always your mum, never your dad in those days. Cooking the baked beans and the sausages and whatever all in one pot. You're eating, sort of wearing your coat because it was freezing cold, and your slippers and your dressing gown and possibly a hat because it was. But nobody cared because you couldn't see anyone anyway. And I mean, I don't know whether I just remember that it was fun or whether it really was fun. I'm not sure.
It really is boom. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kev. It's like the boomer nostalgia hour. I remember. It's like the boomer posts you get on fucking Facebook. That's what it is. I remember back in my day where we drank from the hose and we played with hoops and there were no Game Boys, there was no newfangled steam engines, but we were happy. That's those boomer posts. You've never boomer posted this hard.
No, I think it was fun. And I think, I go back to saying, we do have it easy now. We turn on the radiators. We turn on we expect everything to work when we flick a switch. Well, things don't. And the infrastructure of the country's never been looked after properly. So it's all falling apart now. We never saved in.
Oh, is it? Oh, is the infrastructure not been looked after? Oh, I wonder who's been in power for the last 12 years. I wonder what political ideology has been raiding our public services for the past 40 years. I wonder what kind of media institutions have been backing up that ideology and that government for the past 40 years. It's a fucking mystery, isn't it? It's an absolute mystery that our infrastructure is falling apart, given what people on the right have been doing to it whilst they've been in power. It's crazy shit. Wow, I couldn't believe... No, I didn't notice any of this stuff, but now he's told me the infrastructure hasn't been looked after. Now I realise, brilliant. It's almost like, right? It's almost like, fuckers got what you wanted. It's almost like you got exactly what you wanted when you didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
Enough water. We're on an island. You get more water in the Middle East than we get here. We lose it all. We don't keep it. We've got no desalination.
You're
Don't get me
your
going.
best line. I'm getting all your best lines. I'm definitely not going to get you going. It's a Friday evening. I'm trying to calm you right down. That's not what I want to do at all. Listen, it's fabulous having you on. It always is absolutely delightful. James Well, thank you so much.
They do talk like they're speaking to really old people in this kind of Dan Wootton style. But again, they just get angry at young people for existing and having opinions, really. That's what they do. That's what they're about. That's all they care about. That's all the only programming that they can think of. And again, it's just boomer bait. Just get boomers angry over nothing, stoke the culture war, get the clips to go viral on Twitter, because that's what these platforms are for at the end of the day.